webinar you see agenda of today's webinar, but I would like to start from some kind of introduction that this is the fourth webinar of our series of 10 webinars that we are organizing starting from the September last year, and our aim is to have 10 webinars altogether till summer. So we are quite a lot to do in front of us. Just for those who are joining newly or for the first time, I'm Nerijus Kupstaitis. I'm head of the Forest 4.0 Center of Excellence. We have the public entity, separate legal entity, which is created and developed during the project of that we have together with partners here in Lithuania, and this project is financed by European Union. This is a Horizon program project. It is also co-financed by the Lithuanian government. So we have a consortium in this project of 3 academia partners. Vytautas Magnus University is the leading or the coordinator, and then we have Linnaeus University from Sweden and Kaunas Technology University from Lithuania here. And today we have also our guest from Linnaeus University, but I will introduce him a bit later. And we have also in our project 2 business partners from Sweden, Interior Cluster Sweden, and from Lithuania, Agri-Food Lithuania. Our project is for 6 years, 2023, 2029, and the aim of that project is to establish the sustainably working center of excellence for the digital solutions for forest-related matters, and our main ambition is to have this. To have this competence center working also beyond 2029 and going also more international, even that we now, despite that we now starting more in Lithuania. So actually, we see this Forest 4.0 project and competence center as a knowledge and collaboration platform that unites the in our case forest and digital technologies, IT researchers, and also we are developing some innovative solutions for forest and forest-related sector, but also the one important thing that we are trying to build a bridge of cooperation between science, practice, and policy. With our competence center, we are active also in the forest policy currently on the Lithuanian level, but as I said, the ambition is also to go more internationally. That's very briefly about what we are doing in Forest 4.0, and now we could could go back to today's agenda, and I would like Rokas to ask to put again the agenda on the screen. Rokas, could you do that? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So today we will have one keynote presentation. This is the main presentation for today webinar, and so we will then we have then later on discussion and time for questions, and this is definitely the possibility to have also live discussion. You can easily then join the discussion and ask questions to Professor Carsten, but also to our team. And then we supposed to finish our webinar until 3 p.m. So we have quite a simple agenda and a bit less than 2 hours of our time. So I would encourage all you to use this opportunity and to discuss actively and to have questions to the Professor Carsten. And now I would like to say a few words about Professor Carsten Sørensen, and I would like to read this. Professor Carsten is the professor in digital transformation at Copenhagen Business School and also visiting professor at Linnaeus University. So it is part of one of our partners in our project, and Professor has a long-standing international academic career. He spent 25 years at London School of Economics and Political Science, and Sørensen holds degrees in mathematics, computer science, and information systems. So we being more foresters, we have very good opportunity to hear and to listen and to discuss with interdisciplinary things. The professor has extensive experience leading and participating in European Union international research projects since early 1990s. It means very high experience and long experience. Professor beyond research, Professor Sørensen has held senior editorial roles in leading journals, and also he has deeply engaged as a consultant, executive educator, and board advisor, working with a range of global corporations, public institutions, and international organizations. So very impressive expertise, knowledge, and experience. And I'm really impressed on that. And now I would like to invite Professor Carsten to make our keynote presentation with the title Digital Disruption and Regulation. And with that, floor is yours, Professor Carsten. We are listening carefully, and the people who are attending this webinar, I'm sure already preparing the questions, and like I said in Lithuanian, you can use also chat meeting chat for putting the questions also during the presentation, and then later on we will have the discussion. So Professor, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to share a couple of hours with you. Let's see. We just need to share the screen so you can see my slide. Yeah, and I need to start there. So yes, a pleasure spending time with you. I'm fully aware that not only is English not your first language, and you are not necessarily experts in digital technology. I have tried to make a presentation that may be a little bit difficult at times, but I've tried to make it so that there will be things for you to also discuss later. And you will get a copy of the slides as a PDF document. So I have spent over 35 years thinking about these things, so it's very difficult in 45 minutes to tell you the full story. So what I've prepared is imagine you fly over the country of digital transformation in an airplane. So this is an airplane story where we look at it from a high strategic level, but with some dips into the more practical. So we're going to talk about 5 topics. First, we're going to think about the changing relationships between supply and demand. Sorry, there I've mixed them around. The supply and demand is only number 2. Sorry, my mistake. It's a new presentation. The first we're going to talk about is industry disruption in the information industries, and then we're going to talk about supply and demand as topic 2. Then we're going to link to the physical world where you are spending your life in the forest. We're going to look at it more generally, but we're going to look at manufacturing and forestry in terms of physical activities that are possibly being disrupted. Number 4 topic is the idea of data as something we share together in very particular ways. And the last one, I tried to explain how we could organize that sharing of data in very specific ways. So I hope this story is relevant for you. But just to give you a little background, this is my history since 1970s in my father's cooperative shop with punch cards all the way to modern computers. So in my lifetime and time as a student, I have seen a massive change in the way technology helps organizations by being faster, cheaper, and smaller. And it keeps changing. So the problem here is if I have a challenge to follow the development and I spend all my time on it, it's fully recognized that, of course, people who do not spend all their time thinking about it, they might be even more confused and maybe worried. And there are indeed very good reasons to be worried. The way to explain the digital disruption is by looking at old factories. So what happened in the steam engine factories of the northern England spinning mills, textile factories in the top left-hand corner here, was that all power came from centralized steam engine power. But actually over a period of 80 years, and in particular with the electric motors, the workstations could become decentralized. They were decoupled from the power supply of the steam engine. We are seeing the same things with cars. A centralized engine designs the way the car should look and function by having one centralized diesel or petrol engine, whereas electric cars makes this decoupled and recoupled in different ways. And this is the way to think about digital transformation. So what we've seen in information industries now, whether it's the financial services, telecommunications, or various forms of content provision, we have seen a massive disruption because these are information industries. So digital disruption can happen much faster. And I will show you how. So let's look at music. And I look at music because I've spent many years studying it. I used to be a drummer in a punk band in Denmark when I was a young student. So in the music industry, people thought that the music was the record. And so the music was embedded in a vinyl record that could be played on a record player, and the records would be distributed in record stores. So the way the industry was organized was that, like plates in your cupboard, in your kitchen, each individual company had its own defined role. And over time, they could rest assured that nobody would compete with them below or above, that they would only compete with people next to them in the row of plates next. But what happened with digitization, as we'll see now, is that all the plate fell to the ground because, first and foremost, people started copying music for free, sending it over the internet using Napster, and it was possible because of the MP3 compression algorithm. Sorry. And if it hadn't been for Apple's Steve Jobs, this would have continued. But what Steve Jobs did, sorry, I'm just going to, he forced all the record industry executives to accept that records could be sold as downloads from his store. And from a situation where there was complete chaos and people just stole music, the electronic distribution of the digital distribution of music could happen in a very different way through the platform that Apple and later on Google and Amazon and others set up. Now, Steve Jobs, he thought that people always wanted to own their own music. This is not true. Nowadays, we hardly buy music at all. We subscribe to a music service, primarily the Swedish Spotify. So what we can see here is that over a very short period of time, the music industry changed from in the 1970s, where Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, he could just start beginning to make music from selling records instead of playing live music. And now Mick Jagger is back to the same situation as he started in the early 60s. He has to tour to make money. He cannot make money by streaming. And we can see some of the statistics here, that there is simply no money in streaming relatively, even if you are the biggest names. So what we need to think about is, in the digital world, we have different relationships between supply and demand. And I'll try and give you the very short version of a very, very long story. So in the 19th century, the relationship was the power of scarce consumption. It was hardly anybody had any money to buy things. And that meant that those who had money could get highly personalized services, but there was very low levels of consumption. The 20th century changed that forever. So famously, Andy Warhol, the pop artist, said that everybody has the same Coca-Cola, whether you're rich or poor. So there, the supply side had the power. Those who could standardize the production and have mass production, they won. And you could only demand what could be supplied. The 21st century, with digital platforms, as we're going to talk about later, they were really a new era of demand-driven markets. There are millions of apps on your phone. The ones who are successful are the ones people use. So the consumers have all the power relatively. But the power on the supply side are with very few actors that have centralized that power. I'm going to later on, towards the end of my presentation, sketch out a possible future where there's more democratic decisions over the relationship between supply and demand. But this is a little bit advanced for now, so we're going to get to that over time. I'm going to just introduce a very simple distinction in order to understand money. because this talk is really about three things: technology, organizations, and money. And I'm trying to make you interested because I know you are probably all interested in money. You might not be interested in technology, but money is going to make you listen. So the first in these three categories is the creation of value. So there's somebody creates some value. Coca-Cola creates the value of an ice-cold bottle of Coca-Cola. Then there's an organization that captures that value, and that's the Coca-Cola Corporation out of Atlanta. It decides how much can the market bear, and that is what you charge. So a bottle of Coca-Cola is cheaper in America than a bottle of water. And that is because people who buy water will pay more. But then there's the last part, which people normally don't talk about, which is the delivery of value. So how is the value delivered? And this is where Coca-Cola has its unique selling point, as we'll get to in a minute. So this distinction is really how we make money. And the role of data there is really critical. So to make value, the story is always that Coca-Cola, they have a recipe that nobody else has. That's not important. There's a guy on YouTube has just recreated the Coca-Cola recipe. What really is important is the delivery network. That Coca-Cola has the most advanced logistics network in the world. They can serve your Coca-Cola in sub-Saharan Africa, no matter where you are. You put out your hand and there's a Coca-Cola you can buy. And in the same way, the role of data is really important in these digital platforms for the apps on your phone. And the most important part here is that Apple and Google, they didn't have to pay for the infrastructure to deliver the value. We all pay for that ourselves. So this leads us to the common understanding of digital technologies is that in order for Coca-Cola to make money from selling the bottle of Coca-Cola, they need to have a cost center, which is all those digital assets. The physical assets is the profit center, and the digital assets is the cost center. But what if this is not what it looks like? So the argument I will make that I borrowed from one of my good friends, Young-Jin Yu, is that we are now in a situation where this is beginning to flip. I would argue if you look at the digital platforms for Apple and Google, in particular for Google, you could say that the physical asset is a cost center. You could probably argue that even if Apple is making money on the phone, as I'll show you on the next slide, they are making relatively a lot more profit on their services. So the old joke in manufacturing is we're losing money on everything, every item we sell, but we're going to make it up in volume. But this is what Amazon does with the Kindle. The first many years, the Kindle would lose money. Now it is breaking even. It probably costs just as much to keep making new models as they make by selling them. But what they make really money on is selling the digital books, because the marginal value of selling the books is much higher than the Kindle readers. So here are some examples. I think the one I just want to point out is the last one because it's most extreme. That Amazon sell 85% of their net sales is goods, things you buy on Amazon, on their website. But it represents about half of their profits, whereas services is only 15% of their sales, but it is 50 to 60% of the profit. And the point is there, of course, there are some business that are only information business and they have much higher profit. So the profit margin is really outstanding on these digital services. So if we look at the YouTube video that I've linked to, I recommend you to watch in your own time. It shows really this staggering statistic that Amazon, in 2024, they made $56 billion in advertisement. And they're not even an advertisement company in the normal sense of the word. They just, like the mafia bosses in Italy, they force people who try to sell things on Amazon to pay a protection tax in order not to end up page 10 when people search for them. And even worse, they are even worse than the mafia bosses, because if you make a product that is very successful on Amazon, then they will copy it and make sure that their product is always cheaper and always before yours, because they have all the data. You cannot interact with Amazon without giving them your data. And if you are a company, you don't get access to that data. So this is really a terrible situation. It might be very good for me as an Amazon customer, but for all of those who sell on Amazon, it's a very bad deal. So money could be made in a different way. We don't know yet, it's still early days, but we can think about ecosystems where everybody, even platforms, have an equal say to everyone else. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute. The essence of it is really that if we go back to look at Amazon's platform, it used to be when the platforms were early days, we didn't think data was important. Of course, every company has always known that its customer database and its proprietary knowledge of how much markups and how much profit they make, in terms of their partners, and all of that is highly secret knowledge. But the point is that even if companies have been doing big data analysis for many years, the true importance of data only became really visible to everyone once companies started engaging in these digital platforms. And if you take in the hotels business, people found out that the small hotel owners, they were really not able to make any money from bookings on booking.com and other platforms, because all their profit was paid in platform tax. And so, and also if we look at Amazon as a whole, Amazon have been able to make so much money and be so big because over the years they would lose money on selling books and shoes and everything else, but they would cross-subsidize that loss by paying with all the profit they got from Amazon Web Services. They were really making so much profit that they could put all of that into the loss they made on selling things, and they could therefore outcompete any competitor on selling things on the web. In order to have an equal playing field for every participant in the ecosystem, there needs to be democracy. But before we think about how to organize this democracy in digital cooperatives, we need to think about your business. More specifically, the idea that there's a connection between the digital and the physical, because that is also undergoing a radical transformation. So back in the 1960s and 70s, when computers began playing a role in organizations, there was what has been called islands of automation. There were 3 different islands there were no bridges between them except humans, that were these human bridges between these islands. So you could do computing in quite an automated way. You could communicate using all sorts of communication technologies that were mostly analog and physical and not digital. And you had production of manufacturing that also could be highly automated or increasingly automated. However, there was no connection between the two. What happened with the smartphone and modern day internet, you had a huge bridge and a complete merger between the island of computing and the island of communication. So nowadays, whether I would say that I'm talking to you via a communication medium or whether I'm computing by sending package over the internet, it doesn't really matter. It's the same thing. That I'm sending lots and lots of packages to Lithuania over the internet, but it's a communication channel because there's a convergence of these two. But still a little bit of a divergence between the island of computing and communication and the island of production. However, of course, the reason you have a Forest 4.0 is because Klaus Schwab, the founder of Davos and the World Economic Forum that was held last week, or earlier this week, came up with this idea that the convergence of communication, computing, and production would lead to completely new ways of doing things. And the easiest way I always think about it is, of course, the Internet of Things. You can think about it as the Internet of Things. But a good example I always use is, imagine that you're a high-flying executive and you're on your way to New York and you have forgot your running shoes. You might just have a 3D model of your feet and your actual running shoes, and you send that ahead from the airplane, and it arrives at the hotel in New York, and somebody prints your shoes in a print shop next door. So when you arrive at your hotel room, there's a pair of sneakers in your room, and they fit exactly because they're printed exactly like your old shoes. And when you're done with them, you just hand them back, and they're being made into plastic granulate, and they can be reprinted again. This is sort of this quite utopian vision that is maybe not so realistic, but it's a good way of selling 3D printers. The point of it is, this is an example that I wrote a report about, or I helped with a report about some years ago, in 2019. It was just before the pandemic, so in my view, about 150 years ago. And whenever I do these presentations, I always shake a little bit, thinking, oh, those years sitting in front of this camera all day long talking to students. But the idea of the report is that there are really 5 big forces. There's the 5G and IoT, there's AI, and when we did this, it was before AI became the only box we're interested in. So I always recommend people look at the other boxes. Don't only look at the AI box. There's a little bit of hype there in the AI box, even if it is quite impressive. There's an autonomy box with all sorts of interesting stuff in. There's a hybridity box of digital twins, of all sorts of things that mixes the physical and the real together. And there's a blockchain box that becomes really important for us in a minute. So I recommend you to read the report. It was really good fun. What lots of people helped with doing all sorts of forecasting on these 5 boxes. And my job was mainly to try and come up with some weird ideas about what kind of business models could you imagine if you have these boxes mixed together. But the most important part of that is what I'm going to tell you today. And one of the key things is to really try and think about where is the value in what you produce. And so whether you spend generations growing trees, or whether you use those trees to make furniture, or whether you take textiles and make chairs out of it like this one. This is Frankie. It's a chair from Johansson Design in Sweden. It is a unique chair because it has an RFID chip inside it, so you can scan the chair, and each chair is unique, and this one is called Frankie. And the whole idea there is, where is the value in this chair? And I'm not going to read all of this. You can read it later, but there are lots and lots and lots of different dimensions you can think about the value. And I'm very inspired by a former colleague from anthropology department at London School of Economics, David Graeber, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He made this argument in his book, Bullshit Jobs, A Theory. He says, a glass is manufactured once, but it is washed thousands and thousands of times. And the whole idea of traditionally in the 20th century manufacturing is a short-term perspective that a chair is manufactured once and then it's not my problem anymore. And I think we, of course, have to get away from that. And I'm very happy to be in company with, I hope, a lot of people who have, by definition, a long-term perspective. If you have a short-term perspective in the forest industry, you won't last long. So the whole idea of thinking about all of what could happen to this chair, if you build a really good chair, maybe it lasts a long time. Maybe it can be resold. Maybe you want to be reupholstered. Maybe you want to know how much it has been used. Maybe if you use your chair and it's in an office, maybe you want to know where it is because it needs to go somewhere else. So the idea of thinking about a business model as a much more complicated arrangement. So if we look at this chair and keep it in mind, and then we start looking at music that we looked at before. The music industry suffered the complete delusion that music was the LP. Then music became the CD or the cassette tape. It was not. What happened was very, very quickly, music went from the embodiment of some intellectual property, it became a digital file, it became a digital file controlled by Apple or Google or Amazon. Then it very quickly became a digital stream controlled by a streamer. And what I'm going to suggest is, what if we look at it as something else? We can look at it as a claim somebody has against somebody else, and it is monetized through a smart contract. What if an individual could, and they can already do it, I'm just pretending that they can't now, that an individual musician can say, I own this piece of music. If you want to use it in your movie or in an advertisement or play it on your own music player, you can do so. But there's a smart contract that says, given who you are, you need to pay a different amount. And then it's me who can enforce that contract. Then music is very different. And you can put, instead of music, you can put chair. What can a chair be? What can a log of wood be? Of timber. So the point is here, there are many different ways of considering this. But what we need to do is we need to think about data as a common goods. And there's a lot of research behind this. The first woman who got a Nobel Prize, Elinor Ostrom, did lots of work. She caused a lot of problems with The Economist because of two things. First of all, she was a woman. This was a massive problem. Secondly, she was not an economist. And those two aspects, having worked 25 years at the London School of Economics, I think is very refreshing. And her theories on commons is background for some of this work. I'm just going to make a very practical observation about data as commons and link it to something that some of you will probably already have thought about, namely the idea of the digital product passport that I'm going to talk about in the next slide. But just to give you a little context, so there is no research in my field except the very, very little about the digital product passport. And this is a great shame. But I have now supervised two master students from CBS. One of them, Nikolai here, he did a brilliant job of making a tool that can be used by companies who want to find out how ready are they for the digital product passport. And we hope it can be made available to others. I'm going to meet him soon to discuss this. And then I had Nicoline and Oline, two students. They studied mainly in the textile industry. How can this be implemented? What are the ideas about it? And it's really interesting because it's all up in the air. And the reason it's all up in the air is because from the top down, EU have decided that there will be a digital product passport. And all the reasons are listed at the top of this funnel. There are all sorts of reasons for that. But the point is there, at the level of enterprise innovation, if there is no bottom-up innovation to try and do something interesting with it, then it will not happen. Then it will happen exactly the same as the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. What happened with that? There was a top-down regulation from EU. What happened bottom-up? Nada. The only thing that's Spanish for nothing. The only thing that happened was that an ecosystem of companies making money helping other companies with a massive headache called GDPR, they appeared. That is not a good outcome. So I hope that it'll be possible to have to have some sort of bottom-up innovation that actually makes a synthesis out of this so it becomes a force for change. But for that to happen, we need to engage in a debate, and I've taken an illustration from a Harvard Business Review article that is 12 years old by a very famous person, Michael Porter, and then a guy called James Heppelman. So Michael Porter was the one who invented business process engineering back 30, 40 years ago. They made a paper about smart connected products where they say, well, products may be smart by having various kinds of sensors. They may be smart and connected by having an app so you can read this data and configure these sensors. They might be a product system by connecting to other products than just the one tractor, but then they can become part of a whole ecosystem by having all sorts of other aspects covered and shared data. And the key here is that these different bubbles to the top right, they might each be other companies. So the question is, how do we make companies do business together without some of them feeling that they are a little bit like Jeff Bezos' companies? They are a little bit like the small shopkeeper in Sicily being threatened by the big mafia boss to give money every week in order for the windows not to be crushed. There was a famous book on the mafia in Sicily where the mafia boss goes into a little shop and looks at the shopkeeper's daughter and says to the shopkeeper, "Your daughter looks almost alive." So this was a threat that if he didn't pay, there would be consequences. Now, how do we avoid this situation? We have ways of have ecosystems where people all make money, but they also all agree on what are the rules. And there's only way of doing that in my book, in my view, and that's through digital cooperatives. And I have 3 generations of experience in cooperatives, so I'm not a researcher in it. It is in my DNA, as all the people say in industry. So to the left bottom, you see a sofa with 5 people. The person to the left is my grandmother. She was a very scary woman, very impressive woman. She had 8 children, and anybody who has 8 children, they are dangerous because they are able to command an army. The little person to the right is my granddad, and he was a very gentle guy who laughed a lot. He had 8 children, so he needed a sense of humor. Now, in the middle, we have my mother. And to the left of her, from your side, is my uncle. He's still alive and almost 90. I think he just turned 90, actually. And to the right of her is my dad, who no longer is with us. Now, behind my mother's arms is me. I'm in the picture because it is what Americans call a shotgun wedding. So she was pregnant and they were not married. So this was, of course, a very serious meeting about we need a wedding so we don't have a boy being born out of wedlock. My granddad and grandmother and their 8 children, they had a farm that is up on the picture. That farm was in the northern part of Jutland. It never had a tractor. It had one horse called Lisa that did the tractor responsibilities. Then they had 8 cows and 2 pigs and some chicken and some bees. Now the whole point is he was a member of a cooperative. So all the farmers jointly decided what was the price of milk and what was the price of meat. I think we have a loose microphone. I'm assuming there is an administrative job to deal with that. So the point is here, to be a member of the cooperative meant that it was not the big farmer that decided. So the big farmers used to decide this because they could vote with more votes because they voted according to how many cows. The cooperative movement, you voted according to how many people. One person, one vote. Not one cow, one vote. And that meant it was democratic, so the small were not threatened. My dad, he's not only on the left, he's also in the middle with my mum. And my mum looks very proudly at me. I was then 5 years old. I would say if I was my mother, I would have been very proud looking at me too, because I'm a very impressive person, as we all are. Just the idea of being born is incredibly impressive feat because the likelihood is very small. of being born in this world compared to all the possibilities. So my dad was a member of a cooperative. He was actually running a shop. There was a co-op shop that is on the picture here. And he oversaw the transformation from a shop that was with him giving you the stuff and to one where you would take the stuff yourself. Anybody who was shop there would be a member of the co-op, and you would get paid dividends according to how much you shop there. There was an old-fashioned co-op shop. So, and every year there would be an annual general meeting where everybody would help decide the policy of the shop. One member, one vote. I spent 4 years or 3 years from 21 to 24. I was a member of another co-op. It's the one that has an advert on this cup. That's called the Hedera Blockchain Consortium. And it's a consortium of large and small organizations. So the LSC has got as many votes as IBM and Dell and LG and Google and WorldPay and Nomura. Everybody has the same vote, namely one. And that means it's a democratic system, and it allows the building of other democratic systems. And it does so in a very simple manner. It basically allows you an infrastructure like we have the open internet. It allows you an infrastructure to generate a token. You can tokenize something that is valuable somewhere. It could be a tree, it could be a plank, it could be a chair, it could be anything. It's something that has value between people in the ecosystem. It could be an invoice. It could be anything. And you have a network of computers that keep copies of all the spreadsheets, the same spreadsheet where all have agreed on who has got what token. And then there's a community that all have equal rights to decide what are the rules for who gets what token. And we can discuss later in the discussion if you need an example on that. It's not important now. If you want to read about this, we actually wrote a report where we defined a business model canvas for tokenization, where we used the business model canvas that some of you might have heard of, and we made it into a tokenization canvas that can help you with the process of how can we think about these things. So just for reference, Hedera's blockchain has got 71.6 billion transactions since 2019. Bitcoin has only had 1.3 billion transactions. Ethereum has had about 3.3 billion transactions. So this is a network that is more energy efficient than Visa's network for payments. And it is much, much more efficient than Bitcoin. So Bitcoin right now uses the same amount of energy, I think, as Denmark every year, whereas Hedera's hashgraph uses a lot less. So the idea of this, you can call this new future of digital cooperatives and ecosystems, is really the idea of going from the left hand here, where you can go to market on your own, or you can make connections with between two companies. But more than 2 or 3 or 4, it becomes really difficult without having in the middle here a platform orchestrating and deciding the rules. So it's very easy for Walmart and Alibaba and Google and eBay and Amazon. It's very easy for them to orchestrate the coordination of lots of companies coming together because they just decide the rules. But it's a collective effort, but it's unfair. And they often end up almost winning the whole market and pushing everybody else out. The cooperatives have the idea of doing a bit of both, that they are collective but fair. But we don't know yet whether they will work. There are lots of examples of failures, and there are not so many on successes. But I am hopeful about the future. So if you want to know more about this, then you can read in this report. And I wanted just to spend a couple of minutes on a couple of other reports in case you're interested. So first of all, I want to the left-hand side and the bottom I've shown before. So you can download that report and read about these 5 types of technologies, as long as you remember that we did this report in 2019. So lots of things will be wrong there because time has moved on. And in particular, all my speculations about the future business models, they might all be completely wrong, but hopefully they can give you an idea of something you can be inspired by. But I've written a number of other reports. They are all getting a little bit old. But the ones to the left with PA Consulting, in particular the top right-hand corner with the little gears on, we looked at there the possibility of using digital technologies to listen to the customers, to engage customers, and therefore be more efficient. Now, we did that report. We did all the work from 2007 to 2010. So we did that report way before the app stores became popular, way before the platforms became really popular. So if you read this report, you will see that we were pretty much right, except I thought that the platforms, the engagement of customers would not be for everyone. We have now learned it is for everyone. Everybody has to engage customers to make some of the work. The 2 pictures to the right, where I'm in the pictures together with Max, these are 2 long interviews I did about my participation in the Hedera Council. And these are really 2 interviews where I talk about why do we need blockchain? Why do we need tokenization? And what can companies, how can they benefit? So think of this as 2 more 45-minute talks just on that one slide I had on tokenization. And so they are very popular. I've had 30 and 40,000 views of these 2, which is more than any of the academic papers I have ever published. And then I have some links. And I also wanted to go back and point towards here, if you want to know what the Hedera blockchain, how it works, there's a couple of links here at the bottom. So that was my slide. It was a couple of minutes earlier than time. I always run out of time, but this time I had more time to spare. So this was very good news for you. You get 2 more minutes to ask questions. Please, if you're interested, please hit me up, connect on LinkedIn. I would be happy to say yes to a connection from all of you. Most of my history with LinkedIn has not given a lot of benefit, but sometimes I have some interesting conversations and connections. So I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So that was the end of my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you, Carsten. Thank you, Professor Carsten, for this very, very inspiring presentation. I suppose it was a lot of new information and quite not so easy to understand for all our colleagues here listening to that webinar. Anyway, I would like now to open the floor for the discussion, or maybe first for the questions that you have to the Professor Carsten. I would repeat this once more. You should use this opportunity. We have this very, very great and important discussion, even if it is not directly about forestry, but it's about the future. So the first Kęstutis has the question. Please, Kęstutis. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting and inspiring. One question is not directly related with forest digitalization and innovations, but still like a general question. we see that the progress of innovations and digitalizations and artificial intelligence is growing up, and their evolution is going very fast. So is it important to follow all those trends and innovations and solutions? Maybe you can just wait a bit because something new is coming, and then still you will catch your train, or if you miss something, then the train will gone.
Yeah, yes, it is. It is the daily problem, I think, for most executives and most companies. So spot on. The really my inspiration for an answer would be to use a strategy theory called ambidexterity. So very quickly, ambidexterity theory says that all organizations they have two challenges, and you mentioned these challenges implicitly. One challenge is, how do you serve your existing customers with existing technology? Right? That's you need to exploit that. You need to think, how can I get 5 to 10% improvement over the next decade, or even 5 to 10% over the next year? So that's exploitation. The other one is, well, there's also exploration. You think, I need to think, how do I address the needs of new customers or my customers in the future when they have new needs with new technology? And the problem you have the problem you have to change the tire of the car while the car is driving. That's why it's difficult. So this is, and I've spent years studying this in different industries, and it is really, really difficult. The point there is, so there are two different ways of explaining the strategy. One is what's called structural ambidexterity, which is you just need to make sure that you have some fancy guys in the innovation department. They have fancy chairs, they have fancy glasses, they are paid more than everybody else, and they go to universities and conferences. They need to be able to talk directly to the CEO, the chief executive, and whisper into his or her ear. It's mostly a he, but often most successful when it's a she. And say, listen, you need to force all those guys who are just doing the old stuff to change. But that often doesn't work fast enough. So what you also have to say, there's a contextual ambidexterity, which is, no matter what you try from the top down, if people are not willing to move, then you have to keep firing them and hire new people. So in a sense, every day we are all responsible for ourselves. When do we explore and when do we exploit? When do we think ahead and learn something new? And when do we just do what we know a little bit better? So you can say, to your question, in my view, everybody in all organizations should try and use some AI. There is no, I mean, you need to have an opinion about it. You need to follow. You need to know what's happening. But that, like, the other extreme is then when in the dot-com bubble boom in 2000 or just before 2000, there were companies who began investing crazily only in websites and thinking, we are not going to have an ordinary shop. The only three companies in Britain that made money during the dot-com bubble and bust was Amazon, eBay, and Sainsbury's, a supermarket chain that had home delivery. So the point is here, the combination of the new and the old, you never know what it's going to be like. But what I can say is, to all organizations, you constantly need to experiment, but that doesn't mean everybody has to change all the time. But you need to experiment. You need to think, what would the customers... So it is very easy in case of the digital product passport. There is no way around it. You will need to do something with that. Yeah, but it might be postponed a bit. It might not be postponed. It's the same with any EU regulation. It will likely be postponed, but if you are very late to the game, it'll cost you a lot of money because the consultants will be extra expensive. If you're a bit early, you might be able to do it yourself much cheaper. So I think the point is there, the first move advantage is very rare there. Apple was not the first company to make a smartphone. No. So you don't need to be the first, but you need to be a fast follower.
Okay, thank you for the question and for this answer. Very good. So Rokas is next. Yes, Rokas, please.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. Very inspiring. And it's interesting to think about it, like how to wrap it with the forest. And on one hand, it seems that it's clear what needs to be done, like digitalization of what is already happening, like just to make it more convenient. But maybe you have any examples, like when the company was trying to achieve certain goals via digitalization, and then they figure out something during it, like additionalities that might come up during the process.
So I don't, none of the cases I have studied are straightforward. So the point is here, for me, the only way to understand digital transformation of any organizational process or any relationship between supply and demand on marketplaces is that it is impossible to predict. So I'll give you at least one example from myself. I was, I think, one of the first 5 people who had a Twitter account when Twitter was released to the world. And I joined, and the first and only tweet in many years I wrote was, "This is useless." Because I tweeted something, and there was only a web page you could see the tweets on from everybody. And once I tweeted and checked on the web page, it was already gone. I thought, why would anybody want to do that? And then many years later, I joined back. I went to my Twitter account, and I had lots of followers, but I had not done anything. So I thought this was such a stupid technology, but clearly it was worth $42 billion, right, from Elon Musk. So the problem I have is with digital technologies, it's really important to combine the technology itself with work processes and all the structural things that can both enable some things but also hinder other things. And in the case of forestry, the really physical thing of trees taking a long time to grow. Right? So the point is there, when somebody comes to me and say, well, can we become a platform to do something fast, like Apple and Google on the App Store. So I spent years studying the App Stores, almost 2 decades. And I'm saying, well, Apple and Google could have so fast growth, the same with OpenAI, because they didn't pay for the infrastructure. There's actually a very interesting article by an Italian economist in London called Mariana Mazzucato, who's written a book about how Apple could make the iPhone because it just connected lots of things that the taxpayers in America had paid to have developed. Like everything was developed in research labs, and Apple just took and stuck them together. So the point is here, digital technologies, they can be quickly made, but what works is really difficult. So that's why if you look at just large language models or the new kind of AI, if you look at where are they successful, they are mainly successful in 2 places. So OpenAI is almost exclusively used by people at home. The vast majority of people are just people at home. Whereas if you look at what people are doing at work, then it's mainly Microsoft Copilot, which of course partly is OpenAI as well, but also Claude for programming. So what companies are now struggling with is there's lots of AI available, but how do we integrate it into our work? That's not so easy. And so the easy points can be quick to make. But I think the key is to experiment, which is why for many years when I was in London School of Economics, we taught all our master's students how to do 5-day sprints. So there's a method invented at Google Ventures where you have 5 days where you do a sprint. And I would recommend any of you, if you want to try and do a new project, to try to do a sprint. because it's really, you force yourself to try and think the unthinkable in 1 week, and you force yourself to develop a prototype. So I think all companies need to experiment. And the point of it is, even if you don't do anything, you will be forced to have an increasing amount of digitization of the forest industry. It will both be forced upon you from the top down and also from all your partners that are selling you stuff. All your vendors will tell you stuff that generates data. It's many, many, many years ago when I had a Swedish girlfriend in the 80s. I saw forest machines that had all sorts of advanced automation that generated new kinds of data. So your business is already full of data. A lot of the researchers at Linnaeus University are studying how to use drones to take pictures and movies of trees and to find all sorts of aspects of them that can help to manage the forest. Sorry, I need to.
Okay, so now we have also one question in the chat from Gintautas. Gintautas maybe would like also to ask this directly, but before that, I see that Martinas is raising his hand. So Martinas, please, first your question and then from Gintautas. Or remark or your not on because we are switching so to the discussion from the questions, so it's so Martinas, please.
Okay, good afternoon. My question is quite quick. If let's imagine we are creating a new network of organization, what are like three general, like top 3 mistakes which can be made in that process?
It's a very good question. So I'm going to give you a slightly long answer. I'm sorry to the next one in line, but let's imagine a situation where there are 20 families living in one building, and they all have small children, and they all need babysitting. They can all join each other to make a babysitting coin, a token. So whenever I look after your child, I get a coin. And whenever you look after my child, you get a coin. So the purpose of that coin is not to die the richest person on earth with all the coins. No, the idea is to die with no coins, to leave the consortium with no coins. Now the point is there. So to get to your question, the most important thing here is immediately we establish that so each of us will just need to have a spreadsheet that is copied on we can just have a Google sheet, and we just put in the sheet whenever we get a coin and whenever we pay a coin. So this is very easy. That is a distributed ledger that we have a tokenization system. The first thing that will come up is, so I have a daughter, Anna. If she was young, she's now 18, she doesn't need babysitting, but when she was young, she was very easy to look after. She was a very kind and gentle child. She loved having adult discussions because she's a single child. So she was born 30 years old. Imagine that you have 3 boys that are 1, 3, and 5. Maybe it is not the same effort to look after 3 boys as to my daughter. So the first thing you would have is somebody saying, okay, I don't want only 1, I want 2 coins to look after your boys. And so then we have a governance issue. How do we decide what the rules are? And if you look at all the failures I have seen in these kinds of arrangements are always governance failures. It is never technology failures. It is never network failures. It is always governance failures. So let's take the largest and most successful tokenization project, I would argue, was the one that Maersk Shipping and IBM did for the shipping industry. It's called TradeLens. Lots of things have been written about it. It was basically a way of taking 25 documents in the global shipping arrangement and put those on a blockchain as tokens. And it was led by Maersk, but it became a consortium. And because of changes to the competitive landscape for shipping, and because there was a new CEO of Maersk, and he looked at this and he says, no, we are doing all the work and the others are just not doing any work and getting all the benefits, so I close it. So it was not decentralized enough. It was so centralized that one person could pull the plug and it stopped. Whereas Bitcoin, it doesn't matter who leaves Bitcoin, it will, in my view, always survive. Even if all the ones who own a lot of the Bitcoin, they just sell Bitcoin and the value go really, really low. Even if it goes to zero. If Bitcoin ever goes to zero, then I will just start mining Bitcoin from my laptop. And I will get more Bitcoin because I'm hoping it will get bigger. So if a project is sufficiently decentralized, so not one person can kill it, and there is a governance structure that is solid, then it will survive. But we don't know yet. So the point is there. We have no idea what's going to happen. We really don't know. It is a hope, and for some people a fear.
Okay. So now with the question from Gintautas, Gintautai, would you like to ask this question maybe live, not from the chat, or would you like that we read this?
It depends on you. Thank you first of all for your presentation. It's actually the second time I have opportunity to listen to you, and that is as always, it's very impressive. But anyway, please forgive us because we are trying to use your time to ask maybe also some questions, because anyway we are thinking how to benefit from your experiences and so on. It is not maybe not a question, but it's kind of asking what would be, because anyway this digital product passport is coming, and if we are talking about forestry, we will be facing very specific issues, and first of all with data credibility and then continuity, and then it is because this supply chain is very difficult, and it's not only the forest but it's also, and then it is, what do you think, what could be could you have any suggestions regarding the strategy and priority areas to focus on, and what could be our role? For example, anyway, we are Forest 4.0 community, academia, not only the business side.
Yes. So I'm working with people at Linnaeus on this, because the honest answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows, because as I argued before, it's obvious. You could look at it from one very simple point of view. From the top down, there will be regulations. So that means the primary focus of all organizations at some point will be the monkey on your shoulder hitting you in the head with a big stick. So this will be the key for everybody, namely, how can we satisfy the minimum criteria of the Commission? So this will overshadow everything. So there's no doubt in my mind. So whatever those requirements are, I would just recommend everybody to be a fast follower, to be ready but not jump straight away, but really try and understand for yourself what would it take. And I have experiences not only on GDPR, but also I had a student many years ago that looked at the PSD2, the Payment Services Directive 2 from the EU, that required all banks to open their databases. It's also called open banking. And of course, everybody was really, really nervous. It was something brand new. and it turned out, of course, that they had time to do it, and there was a phasing in period. But the ones who waited too long, they ended up paying more because it was they had to, at some point there was a cutoff. But I would say that, so the top-down demand to just follow whatever rules are imposed obviously will be the first one. But I think the real deal is to think about how all the effort to fulfill the basic requirements can be used for something productive, can be used to think about broadly what is the business model, what data can have what value in this, what auxiliary services can we offer. And I would say I know so little about forestry, despite having had a girlfriend back in the 80s whose dad had 2 forests. I don't know anything about it, but I do know that a lot of data will be created about it, because it's a really capital intensive, and it's labor intensive. So there will be lots of automation benefits, and there will be lots of benefit for looking after the forest well, so you don't leave money on the table. But all of you are more experts on that than me. But it is clear in the manufacturing part of the industry, it's a lot more evident that there are auxiliary business models. So I don't know. But the point is that I would argue very few people know what the connection will be. And I think it'll only be when people start experimenting, we find out what the possible connections are. And my hope is that not all effort will be spent on just doing what Brussels tells you, that this will be the only thing. And if Heidi Svane Pedersen from the cluster, the furniture and textile cluster in Copenhagen, she's been conducting some experiments with people from across Denmark, Sweden, and Norway on this, from the furniture and textile business, where she has a whole collection of experiments where the idea was, forget about the digital product passport, just think openly about what could we do. What would we really like to do? What would create value with others? Making things much, much easier. I think that is, and I think at least in Sweden, so I don't know Lithuania, but in Sweden, there is the interesting thing is that a lot of the forest, if not most of the forestry, is governed by cooperatives. That is actually like Södra in southern Sweden is the biggest co-owner of all the forestry. So they are actually a cooperative already. So when you have a cooperative to build on, then it might be much easier to work out how you also can share information. In Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, again, I don't know about Lithuania, but in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, there's a long-standing tradition for having groups of people from the same sector share experiences. They're called ERFA groups. Erfaring is experience in Scandinavian. And the whole idea is that you get together and you share all your pains and pleasures with each other. And if you learn from each other, you can lift all boats. The high tide lift all the boats, and that means you can all be better. And I think there's a center of excellence like you are running there. It serves exactly that purpose. It's pre-competitive, and that means you could all benefit from the information exchange. But the short answer is I haven't got a clue, other than listen to Brussels.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Carsten. Indeed, it's a bit different situation in Lithuania with cooperatives, and we still in the forestry matters, we do not have good experience with the physical cooperatives. So this is quite a next step to speak about digital cooperatives or something in that direction. But you are right that we with our competence center are trying to make a kind of network for all those discussions inside the community, like we are also today doing a bit in that direction. But I mean, it is important to understand that is a bit other situation. I mean, not directly comparable with that in Scandinavia, but anyway, thank you for this. So do we have?
Just to add to that, so I the last 22 years I've been married to a woman who grew up in Romania under communism. So I fully understand if a country that was under communism for many decades, there is some skepticism towards cooperatives. Absolutely, because the whole point is there. The cooperatives, when I go to Romania and visit my in-laws and visit my wife's family there, what you clearly see is anywhere that was flat lands, immediately the communists make cooperatives that often were really poorly run. And if you go to the mountains where there were small villages, there was no point having cooperatives. So then individual families were allowed to keep their little lands and keep their own farms. And all the houses there looked fantastic and they are very well kept. Whereas in the cities, the houses look like communism with lots of grey concrete. So the point is here, but these collaboratives, these cooperatives, they forced everything to be under the auspices of one central decision power. The trick about the proper cooperatives was, as my dad's shop or as the Hedera cooperative or as my granddad's farm, was my granddad had decision power. My dad had decision power. The point is here that each firm, each company can do as they wish. So in tokenization terms, the key decision, apart from what is tokenized and how do we govern, it also what do we put on chain, as it says. What do we share and what do we keep to ourselves? So that is a big debate because you don't share everything. If you share everything, then the others can use you. If you don't share anything, nobody wants to play with you. So the critical decision is how do we share things we are willing to share? And that means you can trust the cooperative because you know what you share and it's a collective agreement. And the skepticism, I fully understand.
Yeah, okay. So do we have more questions or some notes or some remarks or some thoughts just to jump in our discussion? Indeed, it would be good to use this opportunity, like Gintautas said, that we have Professor Carsten with us. So please, do you have some ideas or some questions?
You're more than welcome to disagree and say this is not relevant for the forest industry the next 10 years, and it might not be. You know more than this than me.
It is, but it is sometimes very important to be a bit out of the box and out of that bubble that we are usually in, and this is, I think, it is very good opportunity for us, even for those who is working more on the ground and with the forest matters only. But anyway, this is important.
Actually, just a small comment. So when I went to the opening of the Forest 4.0 project, I had lunch, and I don't remember her name. I sat next to a woman you probably all know. You might be on the call, I don't know, who was CEO of a manufacturing company in the forestry business who made furniture. I think they made furniture for IKEA. And what she said was that the advent of when Putin went into Ukraine in 2022, immediately there was a crisis because a lot of their timber came from Russia. And so there was immediately a logistics problem. And so I would say if you look at the challenge in all industries that are not dealing only in digital matters, but also deals with the real world material, what we've seen recently is that the global order of peace and stable supply chain has been completely upended by America. In effect, at least the next 3 years have been directly hostile towards the global order of free movement of goods. And that means it is likely that the disruption from the Ukrainian invasion by Putin is not the first one. And so the whole idea of, which I haven't talked about, but of course, one of the key ideas of having ecosystems based on digital cooperatives is that when there's a problem, you are able to very quickly redirect your attention. That you can be a member of several ecosystems, you are sitting on several boards for several digital cooperatives, and that might be that suddenly one of them is not really working, so you should go more on the other. Instead of having to have lawyers go out and make new deals with suppliers that cost a lot of money and takes a lot of time. So this whole idea of resilience, there's a guy I forgot his name now, he's called Taleb. Taleb has written a book called Anti-Fragility. And the whole idea is that systems we build are becoming more and more fragile. So the point is there, you have all your production systems and your invoicing, your supply chain, and then there's a virus that comes from Russia, and suddenly you can do nothing. That's a very fragile system. Mm-hmm. So we are vulnerable to one little virus, whereas we need to build systems that are anti-fragile. This is what Netflix is doing. So in order for Netflix to constantly be able to show video streams to its customers, it has an army of monkeys that goes around and turns off servers in their server farms. So that whenever you build a system whenever they build new software, it has to be resilient enough to not shut off streams to customers when there's a bug somewhere and the server goes down. So I think one of the main reasons to think in terms of ecosystems based on digital cooperatives is to build systems that are very quickly to reconfigure themselves in order to meet these unpredictable tariffs from Trump or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Okay. So. Do we have some more ideas or questions from our audience? Yeah, if not the case, of course, we can also end with that. I would like then to say a big thanks to Carsten, to Professor Carsten. Indeed, I think that this is very, our colleagues got a lot of inspirations for our future work. That's definitely, me at least, definitely, yes. And this idea about digital cooperatives in one or other form is also very, very, very important to think about. So I thank you, Professor, for your time, and thank you all the participants being so active. That's very good. We had about 40 people participating all the time. I was a bit scary that in English it will be less attention, but anyway, it's great. It's great. I'm happy on that. And so I would like then to announce that the next webinar we will have definitely already in February. But we will try to keep this frequency of 1 or even 2 webinars per month, and we will try to keep this tradition that we have webinars on Fridays in the afternoon. So with that, I would like to thank you all and wish all us a lot of success in our works and not only works. Okay, so Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Professor,
very
and
much.
thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.